my name is Katy Robinson. I'm a senior project manager at East Yorkshire Council, and I'm currently running a campaign to address the widespread inequalities in PPE provision and design among minority groups across the construction industry.
Lovely. Thanks for coming on today, Katie. Really appreciate it. Obviously, you've been making big news across social media and other channels, but I just thought you could tell us a little bit more about the PPE campaign and how it all started, really, and what was your involvement in the beginning?
Yeah, of course. So my involvement in the campaign started in August last year. The Chartered Institute of Building launched their PPE That Fits campaign in July last year. And following that, I volunteer with the National Association of Women in Construction, and we've done a few campaigns previously, and we're thinking, what should we do for this year's? And it seemed to be timed quite well when the CIOB's campaign came out. So we decided we'd do a research report off the back of that to see what the current state was with kind of PPE provision, things like that. And as Norwich, Yorkshire has quite a wide range of followers and things like that, it meant that we could get quite a high engagement on the research. So we actually got quite a lot of people responding to it. And then that generated some really interesting results. So we found that nearly 60% of women were not receiving women-specific personal protective equipment, meaning that they're having to wear ill-fitting PPE that is designed for men instead. And that is linked to loads of types of like health and safety problems, as well as actual issues with experience at work. So if you're having to wear PPE that doesn't fit you very well, then it's going to affect actually your ability to do the job, because it's going to be kind of getting in the way and things like that. And then after the research had done so well, we decided actually there is a clear issue in the industry. We should formalise this into a proper campaign. And that started in September last year, and I've been pretty much doing it ever since.
I mean, it's it just shows kind of the widespread problems that the industry has in terms of PPE with the campaign that you've been doing. And I think it kind of highlights that, you know, the thing that we use every day is a problem. And that's quite alarming, really.
Yeah, it's quite ironic that it's called personal protective equipment, but in most cases it's not very personal. So actually having that personal part of the acronym has been able to help us in the campaign to say, well, it's meant to be. Take it personally. You should be. Your employers should be. So yeah, it kind of seems a bit ironic that it's kind of anti-safety, safety equipment and things like that.
Did you? Was there a personal reason for it? Were you on site one day and then put on a high-vis jacket and thought, this looks ridiculous, and these hats and boots? Like, was there a moment that you thought, I personally need to do something about this?
I think throughout my career, I've definitely had experiences with ill-fitting PPE, predominantly kind of in the earlier stages of my career. And it was something that I didn't really want to speak up about because I didn't actually think it was kind of that much of an issue. I just thought, oh, well, everyone's PPE must be like this. You kind of just get the standard one-size-fits-all PPE. So you do have kind of high-vis coats that go down to your knees and things like that, and kind of safety boots that are kind of sliding around and things like that. But when the CIOB started their campaign, I took a bit of time to kind of reflect on my experiences with PPE, and I just found like it was a lot of the reason that maybe when I first started in the industry, I didn't really want to go out on site too much. And it was actually because my PPE didn't fit. It was so uncomfortable, and like my safety boots would cause like blisters and things like that. So actually spending a day on site was actually quite painful for me, and it just got to the point where I tried to avoid it at all costs. I even bought like foam insoles for my safety boots, which made a bit of a difference in kind of the in the short term, but in the long term it was just useless, to be honest. And then last year was the first time that I got provided with women's specific PPE, and that made all the difference. I remember putting on women's safety boots and just thinking, I can't believe I've gone like 6 years without having this, without realising that actually these products are out there and so many women are missing out on it, and it's such a shame because it makes all the difference.
Why do you think that women's PPE isn't offered by employers? Do you think it's a fact of a lack of knowledge that those products are out there, or just a lack of understanding about the differences between the products?
Yeah, I like to think it's just a lack of awareness overall, rather than people purposefully not providing it. Because with our campaign, we haven't really had any kickback of people arguing back saying, "Oh no, women like should wear the same PPE as men." There hasn't been any of that. People are obviously recognizing that there is differences. So I think it is just a lack of awareness on kind of all levels, really, in terms of the procurement. So a lot of companies that have kind of contracts with PPE distributors, they won't even ask them about women's PPE. The managers won't even think to ask their staff how their PPE is and things like that. And it wasn't until kind of the campaign started rolling on that people were having these light bulb moments and people were realizing, of course, men and women need different PPE, completely different body types and things like that. And actually, we should be placing importance on it because the equipment that is there to protect us can actually do the opposite if it doesn't fit properly.
Yeah, it's really it's one of them things that you can't see it until it's brought up. You know, I've worked in builders merchants for a lot of my career, and when you walk into a builders merchants, it's pretty much one jacket, one set of trousers, one set of boots. Yet that thought process of kind of having a women's section has never kind of been there, and even from my point of view. So these campaigns are really really important for for awareness. Um, just on that, then, can you tell us a little bit more about? Obviously, I've seen pictures on LinkedIn. So, for those that are listening that are not aware of what's going on, we've seen this go into Parliament. We've seen, it being spoken about at quite a high level. So, where are we at with the whole process? Like, Where is it as of today? And what are the next steps?
I think so. The campaign has definitely moved on quicker than I thought. I had an aim at the start of the year to get this to Parliament at some point this year, and then it happened in March, and I was like, how did this happen so fast? And I kind of didn't have any plans for the rest of the year as to where this could go because I thought all of my year would be taken up getting to that point. And then when it happened, I was like, what now? Fortunately, we got a really positive response in Parliament. So the minister praised the campaign, recognised that there is issues with the fit of personal protective equipment, especially for women, having to wear men's PPE and things like that. So having a really supportive mention in Parliament was something we were not expecting. We were expecting it's kind of more of a debate, but it kind of wasn't a debate. It was very agreeable on all sides. Currently, we're working to try and get the health and safety executive involved. So we have literally corresponded with them today on kind of what we can do about making it more specific in terms of the regulations and the guidance on their website that actually PP needs to be gender specific and things like that. And the campaign we're running isn't just kind of for men's and women's different PPEs, for the all kinds of what the Equality Act refers to as the protected characteristics, which are all kind of the other characteristics that would or could cause PPE to need to be different. And we would just call that inclusive PPE. So we're trying to encourage the HSE to actually put this on their website to say when kind of they're looking at PPE and when companies are looking at PPE as kind of guidance, then it's up there and it's very specific. Whereas at the moment, the only place you will find gender specific PPE in the guidance is in the guidance to the regulations. And I mean, I don't really know who reads them. I imagine some experts do out there, but it's very clearly in there. I think it's like paragraph 50, it has it in. And just companies are just not doing anything about it. And the HSE has recognised that there is a problem, but they haven't yet kind of admitted that they should be the ones to solve it. Because at the end of the day, if it's a widespread issue, it's not just in construction, it's in basically any industry that has PPE. And if there's such a widespread problem, then it shouldn't just be up to me to fix it. It should be up to the government, it should be up to the HSE and things like that. So hopefully we'll be kind of moving in more of an approach to get them to do a lot of this for us, because currently they're not investigating ill-fitting PPE as a cause of accidents and things like that. So it's really hard to find the statistics of it happening. You just have to rely on kind of anecdotal evidence and things like that. So there's definitely a lot happening with the campaign. Trying to get other accreditations on board is a big one. So the Considerate Constructors Scheme mandated it earlier this year. But in terms of getting the other accreditations on board, I've reached out to all of them, have not yet had a response, but hopefully it's something that, fingers crossed, will get sorted eventually.
It's an interesting point that you made there about, it's not just about the construction industry that uses PPE. It is all these other sectors out there who have a need for this equipment. So it's not even like the construction industry can blame it on, it's a male-dominated environment that doesn't have a lot of female staff working there. Because if you kind of take some of the other sectors, that's not the case. So it seems odd that this is only now becoming something that is being addressed.
Yeah, exactly. And when you think about kind of the health and kind of healthcare and medicine industry, that's predominantly female dominated, yet their PPE is predominantly designed for men. And what that just doesn't make sense to me. In construction, you can kind of excuse it because it is male dominated. I mean, it has taken a while for them to kind of light bulb moment think, oh yeah, of course, men and women they need different PPE. But actually, in those industries that are predominantly female dominated, how did this slip through the net? And in the COVID-19 inquiry, I remember when the pandemic first started, there was a lot of articles about PPE and especially kind of face masks not fitting healthcare workers that were female. And I don't actually think much came of that. It was just there was so many issues going on at the same time that it was one that just kind of got brushed under the carpet. Whereas now we don't have a pandemic to worry about. So why can we not solve this problem so that in the future we don't have to we could just solve it now where the research is there to back it up. The products are there on the market. There's just a gap in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, and I guess it's these things like the mandation through the considerate constructors scheme that's going to help kind of push that forward and make employers more aware. How has that been received on site? Have you had any feedback from considerate constructors?
Yeah, they said it was really positive. They said it was something that a lot of their main contractors were kind of looking at doing anyway. There was a lot of questions that came out of it, of course, like they were saying, oh, well, what about if you have visitors on site? And like if you have all these sizes in men's, do we have to do the same with women's? I was like, yes, because if you're going to have staff on site, that might not be actually operatives on site, that puts them at even more of a risk because they don't know the risks on site. So of course you need to provide them with that because ultimately an injury can happen to anyone as soon as they walk onto a construction site. So if you're just kind of saying, oh, well, we'll protect our workers, but not our visitors, well, actually, no, you need to protect anyone who walks on your site. They are your responsibility. But no, overall, it was a really positive outcome, really positive response and things like that. So hopefully it's going to encourage more companies that are even kind of CCEYH accredited to actually jump on and be like, no, we'll proactively put this in place.
It's quite funny actually. With I'm just thinking about all the other industries, and it seems with PPE, if you actually look back with it's given to protect the company rather than thinking about the person, hasn't it? It's like put that hat on, put that vest on, put them boots on. If that happens, then we're covered. And obviously, it's got to the point where it needs to fit properly. Interestingly, even me, I don't think PPE's ever even fitted me ever, and it's just something you just think, oh, well, it's just how it is. And it's so cool that there is someone challenging it like yourself, especially, from like obviously on the women's side, but just generally ill-fitting PPE is dangerous regardless, of who's wearing it. And I think it's something that all contractors, which especially talking from a construction point of view, will eventually get on board. And so just one point I wanted to make is you mentioned about it is available and it is out there. Who are these businesses then? Because is this something where they're just not getting their stock into the mainstream retailers?
Yeah, it's kind of a bit like that. So as part of the CIOB's campaign, they created a PP directory of inclusive PP manufacturers. So actually, they went out and found all these manufacturers, tried and tested the products and things like that from women in the industry, and then made a big list of them. And there's products that are like you can get maternity wear, high vis, things like that, and workwear. You can get different size kind of eye protection and hard hats and things like that. Even to the point where I think recently there was a PPE hijab developed. So typically before this, women who wore hijabs would find it really difficult to actually get it a hard hat to fit over the top without it kind of moving around too much. So actually creating a PPE version of that just allowed it to comply really easily. And it was just something as simple as that people just haven't thought about previously. And I think the gap, so if you look at distributors now on their website, they will have women's PPE 9 times out of 10. It is something that over the last couple of years has really increased. Obviously, there's always going to be the odd one or two that are still stuck in the past. But those products are out there, but unfortunately, there's issues like they're not very well advertised. So if people are just searching PPE, it'll come with the men's. You actually have to search women's PPE to find women's stuff. And so I think there's kind of awareness on all levels, and as well as I always think distributors, like if they're not actually saying to their customers like, oh well, we stock men's but we also stock women's, you do realize you need both different ones. I think there's an action from them to take on as well. But overall I think it is just a lack of awareness of the products available. A lot of people just think that we're campaigning for personal protective equipment for women to be made, but actually that work has already been done. Fortunately for me, that hard work is done. So it means that actually we're just campaigning for people to realise that these products are available so they can provide it to their staff.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a personal experience, from what I've seen throughout my career, is a lot of the cases the cheaper PPE is bog standard men's PPE that comes, which is why I think, especially in the early stages of my kind of career in the construction, employers would give you the bog standard PPE rather than the women's, because it is more expensive to buy the women's in a lot of cases. And I think that was kind of where a lot of my problems stemmed from when I was provided with a company issue set of PPE.
Yeah, definitely. And if you look at the pricing of men's and women's PPE, women's is more expensive. But if you actually look at the reasoning behind that, men's and women's PPE, if they're made by the same manufacturer, will typically be the same price. But because distributors will go to different manufacturers, they will get manufacturers that only make men's and they will be cheaper because they don't have to essentially make a loss on the women's PPE. Which is why sometimes you'll see men's and women's products from distributors that are the men's are cheaper than the women's, and that's because actually it's a completely different manufacturer. They've just got the cheapest price, whereas they could actually just go with the same manufacturer and then they'd be the same price. So it is a bit difficult, and I think until we increase the demand for it, for actually providing it to our female staff, then we're going to really struggle to actually see these price points kind of match up.
So let's think about kind of where this is going to go in the future. What would you like to see out of the campaign? Obviously there's a lot of that awareness raising, but in an ideal world, where would you like to have the campaign be in 12 months?
There's definitely a few aims. So I think my most ambitious one is to get the PPE regulations amended to actually take into consideration these protected characteristics. I know that's a long game. That's not going to take a year. That could take 5 because we know how the UK government works and we know that it takes time to pass laws and amendments and things like that. So I do appreciate that's something that's not going to happen this year. In terms of the things that I think could happen this year, I'd really like the health and safety executive to actually get on board and start actually formally investigating these issues, kind of when they're doing routine inspections on site, but also actually when accidents happen, when fatalities happen, and actually see did ill-fitting PPE play a part. And I know a lot of fatalities and injuries on site happen because the user wasn't wearing PPE, but were they wearing it because it didn't fit, couldn't be bothered to wear it? I'd like to get a lot more accreditations on board. This is something that ever since the start I thought was a really good way of doing it, because essentially you're pushing companies all the way up from like major contractors to kind of sole traders and things like that. If they are accredited by health and safety accreditation, they will have to meet these requirements. So I think that'd be a really good way of increasing the provision. And of course, things like the work with the HSE and the regulations will impact the other industries as well. I only work in construction, so I only really know how the construction industry works. I wouldn't have a clue how to campaign in other industries, and that's why I'm hoping that the work that we do in this industry can kind of filter across, if that makes sense.
Yes, no, it's really good. So obviously, with all this going on, I wanted to bring up your award because yes, recently with the CIOB, obviously the campaign has gathered, well, it's got a lot of attention, and Can you tell us a little bit more about the evening, what it was around, and the actual award itself?
Yeah, of course. So the award that I received was the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Individual Award. I did not expect to win. It was one of those things, and when the first winners kind of started going up with their categories and everyone was doing speeches, and I was like, I've got to really quickly come up with something just in case. And then when they announced my name, I had a really long walk up to the stage. I was sat right in the back of the room. So I had about 40 seconds to really quickly in my head come up with something to say. But it was such a good night. It was such an honour to receive the award, especially because we worked so closely with the CIOB on the campaign. It was just so brilliant to actually see everyone that I've been working with actually in person. A lot of them I've only ever met online and things like that. So it was such a brilliant evening, and of course, so brilliant to get the recognition for all the hard work.
Absolutely well deserved, Katy. Well deserved. You've put a lot of effort into the campaign, and it's noticed.
Thank you, Caroline.
There's a long way to go. I will talk obviously just about getting everybody involved, including I will refer builders merchants and your big chain of retailers. You know, places like B&Q and Wix and all these type of businesses. How do we get into them? And the campaign will only take us so far. Ultimately, it will get us to the point where it gets spoken about, and I think it's just interesting to see how do we get into them big retailers to make that change. Even now, you go into some of the big chains, and even on the shelf, the PPE is not great. You go into some of the builders merchants. So, does this campaign ever end, or do you think it's going to be constant over the next few years to get it into every possible outlet we can?
I have a feeling I'm going to be doing this for a long time. I think initially I thought I'd just do it as like a 1 year campaign, but now it's getting to the point where I'm not far off kind of that first year, and I'm thinking I can't just stop now, because then if I stop, will everyone else stop? Will that be it? And I kind of feel like I have a responsibility now to actually carry this on to help protect so many people and things like that. In terms of builders merchants and like your big retailers, your guess is as good as mine how we get through to them. At the start of the campaign, I did email a lot of builders merchants. So I originally had the idea because my dad uses builders merchants for his company, and he randomly said something out the blue about couldn't get PPE in his size at the builders merchant. And I thought, oh my god, yeah, they sell PPE, don't they? So I reached out to it's probably the top 10 builders merchants in the UK. Some of them I got a really positive response. Some of them have implemented it. Some of them no response, even after I chased it up a couple of times. So honestly, I have no idea how to get through to them. In terms of your big retailers, again, not a clue. It would just be one of those things that either I'd come across somebody that knows somebody or something like that, who could kind of put me in contact. Otherwise, I'd just be having to go down like an inquiries line and probably find myself in an inbox that's never checked.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just something to consider, isn't it? Like, it's such a big topic that you've done so well to get it to this point, and it's got legs and it's moving quickly, but there's just so much effort, and I'm sure it's not that you'll stop, but to keep that momentum going now takes it takes a lot of, and you're gonna have moments where you feel like no one's listening. It feels like the whole campaign's kind of slowing down, and um, with you driving that and keep driving it, I'm sure that'll be the goal. To get it into everywhere. But just with my experience with merchants, I think when I used to work back in the merchants on the counter, it was very male dominated. The women that would come in at the time, they'd be kind of like project managers with their husbands. So it'd be kind of like a husband and wife partnership, and they'd be doing a project together. Yet there was no PPE there for them. It was just like, that's our setup and that's it. And that was kind of our mentality. I think it's the network, isn't it? So it's like people like me. Maybe I could be your link into the builders merchant world. So here talking about how you're going to get into them, I'm thinking, well, there's probably a few contacts we can start with, to be honest,
Yeah,
and maybe something that we can speak about.
yeah, definitely. one of the builders merchants that did actually respond to me and had a really good response and everything actually implemented some women's PPE. Their chief executive was a woman, which was, I think, the only reason that I actually got a response. I think if it had been a male chief executive, I would have either been ignored or just wouldn't have even got through to them full stop. So I think it does make a difference. But then it's a shame that there isn't more men helping champion this because, like you said, ill-fitting PPE is an issue for men as well. And it's something that I think we need to address fully. While we're addressing ill-fitting PPE, we might as well tackle the full thing at the same time. So it is a shame, and I think we do need definitely more action on it from everyone, really.
Yeah, sorry, Caroline, after you.
I was just going to say, so how do people get involved in that? Because obviously there's a responsibility for everybody to try and get the word out. You know, this isn't a one person can do it all in this industry. It's a vast place to be. So how would somebody, if they wanted to start pushing that in their area, do that?
I think there's a couple of ways. So the first thing is something that I actually did within East Rhine Yorkshire Council, was actually just action within your own organisations. So previously we didn't offer women specific PPE, but I spoke to our procurement team and it was sorted within like 3 days. They offered loads. So it's something that I think just having a simple conversation, asking the question, you probably won't get any kickback about it because it seems like such a no-brainer. People are like, oh yeah, of course. And I think with everyone pushing kind of EDI and inclusivity and trying to address the skills gap at the moment, it's so important that we actually do take into consideration these diverse needs and things like that. And of course, it's a health and safety risk, so you need to protect your workforce. And then another way that people can get involved is something that I've been doing a lot of recently. So there's a way that you can work with your local council to propose a motion. So this is essentially a request for a council to make a change about something. So I worked with East Rhine Yorkshire Council earlier this year to propose a motion to the full council, and this covered mandating the requirement for inclusive PPE across all the service areas, encouraging it with local businesses, and they also had to write to the UK government as well. And that was passed unanimously at East Riding, which was really good. I then encouraged kind of my network to do the same, and we actually got Sandwell Council on board, I think in March last year. And then recently I reached out to over 100 councils to get them to do the same thing. And we've had some positive response. So fingers crossed that we'll have a few more do that. And that's a really good way. It's a good way of kind of protecting the workers of the council. Of course, there's not just construction teams. In councils, there's refuse workers, building control, planning, things like that. And all these workers will go out on site or go out and do their day job, and they will need PPE. So it's a good way to kind of ensure that they're protected as well. It's a good way to encourage it with local businesses and things like that. So a lot of contractors, a lot of councils use frameworks for kind of all of their services, in terms of construction, things like that, and maintenance. So it's a good way to kind of encourage it with the supply chain as well. And then, of course, right into the government to get the regulations amended just puts further pressure on them, which is what we're trying to do.
Plenty of ways people can get involved then. If people had questions about that, are they all right with reaching out to you on LinkedIn, Katy, to find out how to start that process of going to councils?
Yeah, of course. So I'm sure Dan or Caroline would be happy to put one of my LinkedIn contacts somewhere. Or there's my Instagram, which is at the PPE campaign, so you can kind of reach out on whichever.
Yeah, you're this deep into it. I'll throw everything at you now, aren't we? You know, it's like you can't leave now. One point I will just bring up quickly, which because I actually felt quite bad about it, and it was the event that we had. It was the Constructing Excellence event, which came on quite recently, and I know you came, Katy, to do a talk, didn't you? And there was a post that was put up by one of the ladies at the event, and you were speaking about it, and it was about the lack of male presence there. Obviously, you know, being part of CE was a bit of and I wasn't there even to be there. I was actually on another matter. I know there's me saying everyone should go, and I weren't even there. To then see a post to go up that it was all literally women, and we had literally a couple of representations from men. Pretty much says it all, doesn't it? It said it all in that one sitting. So I think that it's a bit of a shame that, but I think that again, rather than berating everybody, the awareness that you've created in this last 5 weeks is probably more awareness than anybody's ever seen of it, ever. So it's that whole. It's just taking time to get around, and even just sitting with you for this last kind of half an hour to talk about it has inspired me a little bit to go. Do you know what? We need to do a little bit more. We're in positions. Of authority and positions to inspire, whether because, I do a lot of work within education and schools, even that is a platform to be able to talk about this. And so, no, a little bit of inspiration from there. So, yeah, it's good. Are you doing any more talks? Are you doing any more stand-ups and where people can come and see Katy Robinson?
Yeah, I've got a few booked in actually. Again, I'd probably just recommend looking on my social media for kind of the exact dates and things like that. I've got one coming up with APSI, which is the Association of Public Service Excellence. Got one coming up with the Institute of Civil Engineers, and then there's more in the pipeline at the moment. There's another one with CIOB, so I did one last year, and there's another one coming out. We're just waiting to kind of firmly publish the date for that. But yeah, there's definitely a lot coming through, so I'll be sharing all that on kind of social media and things like that.
So if you were going to give some advice to a new entrant to this industry, given your experiences that you've had so far, if somebody was presented with a high vis that went down to the knees and boots, as a timid 16-year-old coming into the industry, what would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
I think I'd recommend that they spoke out about it. So I'm sure there'd be someone in that organisation, whether it be kind of a line manager or just a colleague that they had that they could kind of feel confident enough to speak out about. It's really important that people do speak up. I know it's really difficult. I know there's kind of a stigma associated with it, especially for women speaking up about things. It is so difficult. And I think in my apprenticeship, that's why I didn't speak out. And frankly, I also didn't think it was an issue as well, when actually, if you recognise it is a problem, your PP should fit, it should not go down to your knees. That's really important because you know it is a problem. And if you know it's a problem, then you're more likely to do something about it. And I have to say, it's not up to the employee to sort out their PPE and things like that. It is on the employer. So you need to put it back to your employers to say, this doesn't fit. And even kind of reaching out, there's plenty of campaigners on PPE and things like that. If you wanted to reach out for a bit of advice or things like that, then I'd be happy to help in terms of if you want to draft an email or even just topics on what to talk about and things like that. I think it's really important that if people do have problems, they need to make it known. And it's so difficult to speak up, but it's something that you really should do because it doesn't just benefit you, it'll benefit potentially your other co-workers, people coming into the company and things like that. And overall, it just makes your company safer anyway. And I don't see how anyone could ever argue against that.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Absolutely. No, it's really good. Really is good. I think that what we'll do with this is try and get more regular updates as well, Katy. We want to, part of Constructing Excellence is to support this. So you coming on and talking about it today isn't right, we'll put it out and forget about it. It'd be really good to keep up with the journey that you're on. So, even if it's going back on again in another month or even if it's in a couple of months, just to keep us posted, because the more that we have this platform to put out, at the end of the day, this whole platform of Constructing Excellence is to share best practice. So, what better way to do it? And it's moving quickly by the looks of things. So, yes, more than happy to have you on as a regular. And you can even come on and host it.
There we go. Thanks for coming, Katy.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.